Background here, the name Trigger is not my Christian name, obviously. I got it, it's a nickname, I earned it, trust me, it's a long story, it's just, well, shoot. There's a bullet in my leg and I put it there. That's how I got my nickname. It went from Lefty to Hop Along to Trigger to Gunsmoke, Trigger Stuck. I had no choice in the matter. It's just the way it is. So you live and learn. I do cowboy poetry. I've been writing since I was about in middle school. Never really quit writing. Really enjoyed a lot of the old Western stuff, you know, growing up with a cowboy for a dad. You know, you watch all these old West movies, you hear old Roy Rogers and Gene Autry sing about all this great stuff, and then you get thrown into it. So I always like to reminisce about the old days. I do a little bit more conventional stuff, more modern, but the old stuff always appealed to me for some reason. I think it's ingrained in me or something, I don't know. With that being said, I wrote one. It's very familiar to most people. You know, cowboys still like to gather around the campfire at night and talk. You know, day's events, how things went, wrecks, good loops, whatever. This poem is entitled Idle Chatter. It was a regular night, seated around the fire. A few boys drinking coffee and calling each other a liar. They got to talking about the times and how it's gonna change. Fencing in big properties and closing in the range. One cowboy got up. "They say we won't last, can you believe that?" Slowly squatting back where he sat. "I don't get it," one man said. "Without us here, this business would be dead." Well, a horse could be heard pulling into camp. The segundo was by the creek, his boots slightly damp. "What's the topic tonight?" he deeply asked. "We're talking about the future compared to the past." Well, Segundo thought for a minute. "Boys, this business is set. As long as there's a cow, there's cowboys, and that you can bet." Well, a hot cup was poured and the conversation was eased, each of them satisfied, not one person displeased. A young cowpuncher spoke. "I know I ain't much been in the saddle, but I love this job, and God, I love cattle." Well, they all laughed and carried on, and one by one they fade, relaxed in job security, as though they had it made. Thank you. I can see the sound man struggling to keep up with me here. Am I doing this too much? Should I just stick it to my goatee and just... What if it gets caught? Then you'll hear a yodeling act. That's bad news. Years ago when I first met my wife, I hadn't been around someone who had the taste that she had in decor. So I went to her house and I got kind of used to everything, and her house is like a Western museum, man. I'm not kidding. I mean, she's got everything from rattlesnake collections to arrowheads to Indian rugs, you name it, buffalo skulls. Everything is beautiful. And everything matched, which is not what I grew up in. I grew up in a house where if it was there, you sat on it. If it was there, you used it. Whatever. We never had this no-touchy thing in our house when I was growing up. I'm just going to do a quick survey here real quick. Gentlemen, just a gentleman, how many of you have ever heard of show towels? Anybody? Nobody. Ladies, how many of you have heard of show towels? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the list keeps going. Gentlemen, welcome to my world. Enter Cowboy here. I had just gotten in the house, and of course, the story in a nutshell is pretty much dinner was on the table and I had to go get cleaned up. With this in mind, I'll give you show towels. When most of us were growing up, we learned to wash our hands, dealing with the feedback all across the lands. Wiping clean the dirt and grime we collect across the lands. My mom once told me to dry them off on a towel that was clean, so naturally, I did it good on the first thing that I seen. With this in mind, I'll go on and I'll tell you of my deed. I just came home from work making money that we need. She yells to me, "Get washed up. Dinner's almost ready." So I head to the sink and lather up real steady. After rinsing, I shake 'em good and turn to face a towel, drying off my hands, which earlier were quite foul. As I'm about to finish the job, my fiance walked in and glared. Tells me of these show towels. A secret she'd not shared. My first reaction, of course, was, "What the heck are those?" She proceeds to tell me they're like porcelain dolls with bows. "You're not supposed to use them," she yells right in my ear. "They're only there to look nice. I've had them less than a year." Why, I had no clue. You hung a towel for show. The way I was raised up, how was I supposed to know? All I did was dry my hands, not that they were soiled. But the way she came uncorked, you could see her blood was boiled. I calmly apologized and headed out to my plate awaiting me, but since that little occurrence, she just couldn't let it be. "You've never heard of show towels?" "Not once in my whole life." "Well, you better get used to them if I'm going to be your wife." "Okay, so where do I dry them off after I go scrub clean?" "The usable towels are underneath the sink." You mean the ones I've never seen? "You've been using my good towels ever since we both lived here?" "Well, yeah, they're clean and dry, so I had very little fear." "I should wring your neck for this. You know how I am." Okay, let's forget it. I'm sorry." "No, let's forget it, ma'am." I noticed a little theme going on up here amongst all the poets so far that have taken the stage, and everybody seems to be talking about their lid. For whatever reason it may be, everybody pretty much knows cowboys are infatuated with the hat they wear. I've had several of these over my lifetime. One of them particularly I actually gave a nickname to. I love this hat. I'm not kidding. This hat went through hell and high water with me. It was my prized possession. I ended up nicknaming it Old Faithful. Well, after the years had passed by, Sherry and I ended up getting married, and her little cousin at the time, who grew, but at the time he was in our wedding, just before then he asked me if he could have Old Faithful. No way. He begged me for weeks on end. "Please, I just want your hat, And I finally broke down. I'm a sucker for kids. I don't care who you are. I mean, how do you look at those little eyes? Well, big eyes, little body, staring up at you with those puppy dog eyes going, "Oh, please, let me have your hat." So eventually I says, "Okay, here's the deal. When I buy a new one, you can have Old Faithful." He kept it throughout the remainder of his life until his untimely accident. And to this day in Mississippi down there, just outside of Jackson, in his bedroom, on his bedpost, sits Old Faithful. Me and Old Faithful, we've seen a lot. He's been in good shape since the day he was bought. The weather we've seen and the trees we've scraped, he's still got the sweatband, no need to be taped. Hell, it almost fell off one day. I got mad, I threw him down and picked him up feeling sad. Well, I sewed it back on and he's good as new. He's lasted longer than any old shoe. Hell, it's been 6 pair of boots I done worn. Sure, he's a little slumped, but he's still not torn. Yeah, I'm gonna keep him. There's no doubt about that. He's a Larry Mahan Collector Series by Milano felt hat. Thank you. I got 10. Boy, there's a lot of talking left to do up here. 10 whole minutes. Recently, I took the endeavor to take on this challenge here, to come down here and get up on stage and perform, since it had been a while for me. And I told him, I said, "Well, gosh, I hadn't been on stage in quite a while. Shoot, since the Pikes Peak Cowboy Poetry Gathering back in the Springs." He goes, "That long." That long. He says, "Well, when was that?" I says, 96. Well, you never got on stage since? I says, well, sure, I did one little deal up there at the Flying W once. I performed up at Mule Creek Outfitters up in Lake George for Western Horsemen, but they were more apt to look at how they were packing mules than they were the Western entertainment around the campfire that night. We didn't get a single mention, me or the guitar picker. We're going, well, that was a wash. I wanted to be in Western Horsemen. He's, yeah, so did I. What are you going to do about it? I'm going home. What are you going to do? So I took it on. I said, sure. Now, keeping that in mind, have a little bit of leniency on me here, folks. I'm not 100% sure I got this one down all pat, especially since I just tried to memorize it yesterday morning. Like I said, I really enjoy writing about the old Western stuff. And I was watching this movie with my old man, and it was talking about these old cowboys on this cattle drive who come into town and tear the place up. You know the story. Pretty cut and dried. And they get into all these problems and have all these scrapes, and I figured, you know what, that would make a great poem. So I sat down and I wrote about it. It's called Talk of the Town. The snow's been falling all day, and this is the coldest yet. This outfit's had a rough time getting them set. A drive's coming and time is short. All this herd needs is a trail brand. Last month we were in Texas riding in the sand. My partner almost crippled his horse roping a heifer down and came close to going with it when we all went to town. You gotta know we got crazy and lost all our sense. We got to drinking and went outside, and old Whiskers took out a fence. His mount got away from him as a shot rang out. He fired his 6-gun with glee, his eyes all crossed and red, God knowing he couldn't see. The horse ran for a house, the one the barkeep said to own. In his saloon above the bar, he kept his ownership papers well shown. This horse was stubborn and stout, Whiskers on his back screaming, "Tarnations, cut it out!" While all this was going on, without a moment's pause, I fell backwards laughing, corn whiskey helping the cause. This horse, meanwhile, continued his fit. Oh, wait. Messed up right there. You see, it wasn't just the house, or the fence, but after it fell down, Whiskers' crazy horse ran for the porch, kicked up his heels, and started spinning round. By then, I had tears in my eyes while I proceeded to soak my drawers. Whiskers got clean bucked off, staggering up and rubbing his sores. This horse, meanwhile, continued his fit, outright and quite steady. Out the door came a woman, the barkeep's wife named Betty. In her hand, there hung a lantern, shining bright and wide. The horse flat kicked her arm and threw it to the side. This, in turn, started the fire in the yard by the house, taking all it wanted, including the shack owned by her spouse. Whiskers ran for it in fear. He wanted no part of this, God knowing good and well his reward would not be a kiss. A few days passed by and all went pretty good. Work went on and no sheriff came, so we kept on like we should. Blackie, our foreman, went to town to see if the smoke had cleared, and went to the saloon for a drink, and all was not as feared. It seems he heard the regulars talking of that night, asking if those guys were anywhere in sight. It was odd, to say the least, that a reward was overdue. The boys had burned down a cat house and the barkeep up and flew. Betty was not his wife, but a lady of the night, and the sheriff's been trying years to get them out without a fight. So old Whiskers done that town a favor burning that house down, and Whiskers' crazy horse is now the talk of the town. I think we're going to go ahead and hand it off from right there, folks. Thank you for coming out. Can't appreciate you enough. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.